it's Felicity from GetYourRockOut here with a couple of the awesome guys from the Dream Circuit. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Yes, very good, thank you.
Brilliant. We're here at HRH Prog, and you guys are the last band on stage 2 tonight. So are you very excited about it, or are you kind of pre-show nerves kicking in a bit?
No, really looking forward to it, you know. It's been a good weekend, and I just hope enough people stick around to check us out before heading off, because it's a late one, and it's been a long weekend, but hopefully we can close proceedings in style.
I mean, it's always great to be able to, you know, actually close a festival up, but it is relatively cold down in stage 2.
Relatively.
Yeah. Okay. It's absolutely freezing. I mean, is that a viable concern for you? Are you a bit worried about kind of playing-wise and all of that kind of stuff that it's going to be?
Yes, and it doesn't help that my finger's actually split open, so I'm having to cover the finger with a plaster, so there could be a few screams that aren't supposed to be part of the music tonight.
What happened?
I think obviously I played till my fingers bled at the last gig, and the last 3 songs the booze was kicking in, so I could continue because obviously the booze was acting as a painkiller, but I've obviously had this split in my finger for about a week since then.
It's all very rock and roll, though, eh?
Yeah.
It is. It means that you're just going to have to get blind drunk before you go on stage so you don't feel it.
It's possibly not a good idea because it may affect the playing in a negative way. But then again, who knows?
Yeah.
If you could reach a happy medium, yes, you just need to get drunk enough that it doesn't hurt, but not so drunk that you can't play anymore.
Yes, I need to find that chemical balance, absolutely. Very true.
No, I mean, a couple of people have said, you know, it has been exceptionally hard to play, especially the more technical stuff with the exceptional cold, and so...
Oh yes, our stuff is extremely technical. You know, nobody else could possibly play what we play. Yes, and the cold obviously is a big challenge. If anyone's got a scarf, could they please lend me the scarf?
It is, I know, but to be fair, it is... I was thinking that yesterday. We were down there watching a couple of the bands, and it did cross my mind, but I think, you know, first song might be a bit shady, but then when your adrenaline kicks in, you kind of get going and you get into it, and you kind of forget about it, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
So have you actually managed to see anybody else this weekend?
Yeah, let me think. Who did we see yesterday?
Hawkwind.
Saw Hawkwind last night for about the millionth time, but, you know, always a good show.
Straubs.
Saw a bit of Straubs, yeah. And there was another good band on down there yesterday, also Eden. They were good. Yeah, liked them. I was impressed by that. Saw a bit of Arthur Brown. Thought he was great yesterday. Yeah,
as always.
Really good show. Yeah. I can't remember who else I saw. Didn't see much.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably about it. But yeah, good. Quite an eclectic lineup, and you know, that's one of the good things about the prog genre. It covers such a ridiculously broad spectrum, from, you know, pseudo metal to out and out keyboard.
We're very hard to categorise, obviously, as are all bands, you know, trying to do original stuff. You know, who can say where we fit in the
because
in the scheme.
I think it makes people overall much more receptive to what you're doing, because they're not. I think in some respects they don't know what to expect. So. And they're open to it as well, so it's, you know, nobody's expecting us to sound like Yes or Marillion, and equally nobody's expecting us hopefully to sound like the more metal end of the genre. You know, we'll probably fall somewhere in between.
Or if they are, obviously they will be disappointed.
And yet slightly surprised and delighted at the same time.
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
I mean, there's been such a wide range as well, spanning this whole weekend. It's been wonderful. But I mean, audience-wise, there's an absolutely cracking atmosphere. And something that surprised me as well, there seems to have been quite a few of the kind of younger generation as well that have headed to this. And, you know, not just in a terribly stereotypical way. I mean, prog, generally, it's associated with the older end of fans. I mean, you guys have been around for, what, 12 years now in this incarnation?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, have you noticed much of a difference, kind of audience age-wise? Has it been something that you've seen that it's kind of enjoying a bit of a resurgence at the moment?
We're seeing a few younger people coming through now. I think back in the day, you know, before the internet, and you know, when I was growing up, when people said prog, you know, I got into punk first of all, and prog was almost a dirty word. But the only way you could actually go and hear some prog music was to go and buy a record, and you weren't going to do that if that wasn't what you were into. Whereas now, I think people can check it out for themselves online, and you know, and think, well, actually, yeah, I do quite like that. And
yeah, I think perhaps music is becoming less associated perhaps with journalism and becoming something, you know, in its own right that isn't connected to a stylistic notion of, you know, what music should or shouldn't be. Possibly because we're obviously in a postmodernist era now where everything's up for grabs and everything's been done to a certain extent, and I think in a way perhaps prog is the only way to get new ideas forward within, you know, music generally.
And are you guys just constantly experimenting with it? I mean, do you think that you'll ever kind of reach a stage where you're thinking, you know what, we're happy with this, and we're just going to stop the experimentation, or do you think you're constantly going to be pushing boundaries and seeing what else you can do?
Well, I don't think we're a particularly experimental band in the sense that we like to evolve the style that we've got into something that we haven't done before, and maybe, you know, take influences from the past to generate new ideas. But there is nothing new, obviously, in music. It's just how you can put it together in original ways. I think obviously we'll always try to do that as a progressive band. You know, we're always aware of what, I think, you know, when we're doing a jam session, we're aware of what we're playing might be derivative, and so we try and steer away from that as much as possible, obviously.
Yeah, but also we're not, you know, I've said this before, we don't have to sound like anything, you know. We kind of evolved into where we are now, and so we have our own sort of particular style. Yeah. But if we want to put something a bit quirky or different in, then as long as we like it, then we'll do it, and it doesn't really matter because there's nobody behind us saying, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, that's the whole point of progressive music, isn't it? That you can take different influences from wherever. And obviously, as Andy said, you know, the danger is that you could end up sounding like a particular band if you're not careful, if you're just pastiching what's gone before. But it is a difficult kind of area.
Yeah, you know, when you go and see other bands, and the last thing you want to do is to come away saying, oh, they sounded just like so-and-so, or that was generic or prog by numbers, or, you know, if such a thing is possible.
Just going to say prog by numbers.
Yeah. But, you know, there has to be something in there that makes it stand out, and something a bit different that makes people come away thinking, yeah, okay, that was interesting. I liked, you know, they might not like all of it, but hopefully they'll take something out of it, and that'll make them want to come back, or make them want to go and buy a CD or whatever it is, to keep coming to see you and checking you out. And, you know, as you progress, you know, I've seen Hawkwind live a ridiculous number of times, but over the time I've been seeing them, the sound has changed. They've done a whole load of different stuff, and if you go back to like their early days, they're completely different to how they were in 1976 or 1980 or whatever, and that's part of what keeps people coming back, because you get that core fan base that stay loyal, and some people drop off but new people come in. And, you know, I'm not suggesting that we're at that stage yet, but hopefully over time you do get that, and you build up a bit of a following, and people stick with you, as long as you're not, you know, I think if we went all funky we might lose quite a lot. But
bring out a dubstep record.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen.
I was hoping that would be our new direction.
Maybe a side project, dub circuit.
I've become quite a fan of Take That recently. You know, I think some of their musical ideas are especially interesting from the commercials.
So we can't expect like an album of Take That covers anytime soon. No?
Well, I suggested it to everybody, and they weren't having it. And as a band is a democracy, I suppose we'll have to leave it at that.
Yeah, such a shame as well. It would have been.
It could have been a new take on Take That.
I think, you know, I really want that to happen. Actually, I want this to. Yeah. No, sadly, I think that's one that's never going to.
No, let's leave it there.
Yeah. Moving swiftly on. You guys, you had an album out last year, or was it this year?
Was it last year?
Late last year. Yeah. So yeah, you had an album out last year. I mean, when you're kind of writing an album, what are you thinking when you do it? Are you thinking we want to try and show our fans this, or this, or are you thinking we really, really like this, we want to somehow communicate this?
Well, the album that is out is actually a compilation album of us kind of over the years. But as in, you know, if we're writing what you might term a concept album, I suppose you could say that we might think about how the tracks might have some sort of theme or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
Or it might just all come out.
Well, we talked about it a bit, didn't we, before, about, you know, we kind of write songs individually, so we don't write them as, I don't mean individually as individuals, but separate, not as a body en masse. And then it's how you piece those together. So we were talking about before about, you know, putting some incidental music in between and building it much more as a structure so that it does sound much more like an album. Rather than a collection of songs, so it's got some sort of coherence.
Yeah, I think if we were to do that, obviously we'd need to think carefully then about how the songs related to each other and to find some common threads and that kind of thing. Obviously the creative process as a band, you know, it's not like, for example, with Pink Floyd, Roger Waters writes a concept album. We're writing as a kind of democratic group, if you like, even though some of us might come up with ideas and then they get expanded on. Obviously, to write something with a common theme is slightly more problematic.
When it comes to the writing, are you all kind of just as involved, or is it something that somebody will come up with the first idea, somebody else will develop it, and then blend it completely?
I think it varies from song to song. You know, for example, the keyboard player might come up with a riff, and then we expand on that, or one of us might write a complete song. You know, so the ideas can come from different places and can evolve in different ways. You know.
Yeah, but the overall song at the end of it has everybody's input in it, so, you know, even if we come up with a complete song, I might write a complete song and take it to a rehearse and say, right, I've got this, and they'll say, yeah, we don't like that bit, let's try something else, and which is fine, you know, which is good to have that because it injects something else that when you work in isolation you don't have. It's good to get that additional input, and at the end of it, 9 times out of 10 you'll come away thinking, actually, yeah, that was a good move. Not always.
Yeah, some of the songs have been written kind of, you know, from start to finish by one person perhaps, but most of the time it's kind of a democratic kind of thing where everyone gets involved and throws their ideas into the pot, and then, you know, it's just kind of a take it from there, and, you know,
yeah.
You never know where you're going to end up.
Yeah. And it could, you know, sometimes it's one particular element of a song that makes it. So even if you're not technically the writer, you know, the bass player comes up with a cracking bass line, that can make a song, or a great drum beat. You know, there are countless numbers of songs where you listen to it and you think, what makes that is actually it's the lead guitar break or one element of it that somebody else has brought and put that in. So.
And if you were talking to people that hadn't heard much by you and you were to give them 3 songs from your entire back catalogue that you thought summed up the band completely, what would it be?
Okay, you choose.
Oh, blimey. That's a
Not to put you
one.
on the spot or anything.
That summed us up. Oh, gosh. I'd probably go for Egyptoid, which was actually probably the first song we ever wrote.
I'll choose Psychedelic Order.
Good one. And probably one of the new ones, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Either remote
how long
control.
How much tape have you got? This could be a long
3 tracks.
Long
this
one.
is an interesting number. You know, maybe Remote Control Soul is quite a different one for us in a way. As Egyptoid it was, I suppose. The new one's kind of along the lines of Egyptoid, isn't it? With a kind of Eastern theme. That's quite an interesting kind of mix of styles, I'd say, the latest one. Anubis. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Or ossified. We haven't got a proper name for that.
No.
But, yeah.
Yeah, and
So the two of you could really never agree on the topic.
Well, 3 songs, it's difficult to choose. You know, it depends on your criteria.
and they're quite different. I mean, you know, we do have some song. We don't have that many that are traditional song structures where they have verse, chorus, yada yada. You know, and we do quite a few instrumentals as well. But even within the instrumentals, they sound very different. So it's hard to sort of pin down. But from back in the day, I guess, yeah, Psychedelic Order and Egyptoid probably.
Yeah, and they're quite different from each other, but they do, encapsulate.
So they kind of encompass what we do. So. So, yeah, and perhaps something like Brave New World, actually, which is more of a song, a traditional song structure.
That was written as it was, and that's how it stayed. You know, that particular one. In that, yeah, like you say, it's another style, isn't it? Altogether, almost Rush influenced.
And what those probably encompass overall is, you know, we're quite hard, I think, when we play live. I think we're quite loud and in your face at times, but we also have, you know, quite musical intricacy.
Yeah, quite a bit of
well.
contrast, between, you know, loud sections and quiet sections, you know, so there is a dynamic thing. It's not just like we stay the same level all the way through.
Yeah, and I think that's really what makes us work, I think, is because we bring that, so we don't do all of one or all of the other. It's a blend of the two, and so it's loud enough for people who are into
for example,
slightly heavier stuff.
That's a good example of how, you know, you go down to a quiet section in the middle, and then, you know, it's, you know, full on in other sections. So
yeah.
And you've got an album coming out later this year.
Not necessarily.
Oh no. Okay. The plan was to have an album coming out later this year. You
we did have a conversation
don't.
earlier about
this. Yeah, we were talking about this. We've been writing quite a lot of new stuff, and we're getting to the stage now where we've got enough stuff to start looking at putting it together, and it's really just working out how we're going to do that and the time scales involved. So it may or may not be this year, but I guess the key is that there is quite a lot of new stuff to come out yet, and we've started putting some of those into the set already, and which has been going down well. And we've got probably another 3 or 4 at least that we need to bring up to speed before we can put them in. So for people that come and see us regularly, you know, there's some new stuff in the pipeline.
I almost think it might be better to have a lot of the songs that would go onto an album kind of gigged, so that when we do actually record them, you know, we know exactly or roughly what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I think we'd rather do that. We'd rather, you know, when we write them, we want to play them. So I'd rather play them live and let people hear them that way, if that's the only way they can hear them for the time being, rather than sit on them for 18 months and, you know, by the time we get around to doing it, we've written a load of new stuff and kind of working backwards.
Yeah, and you get a reaction from the audience as well, you know, which helps. So if we did play something and everybody was just completely, you know, numb to it, then obviously maybe that would
Not that I can imagine that would ever happen.
No, of course, but I was just being hypothetical.
Wonderful. In the next kind of 6 to 12 months, where can we expect to see you, and what can we expect to see you doing?
Well, just get down to your local club. We'll be there, you know. Bookings, please.
Well, yeah, we're hoping to get, you know...
Yeah, everywhere, basically. Anyone who will have us. Anyone
who'll pay us.
Yeah, anyone who'll pay us, exactly. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we don't come cheap, but then we can obviously negotiate. We can negotiate from quite a high price.
I think basically we want to get some more high-profile stuff. We did quite well last year. We had a good year. We managed to break through into a few of the smaller festivals, and that was really good, and we got a really good reception from that, from a lot of people who hadn't seen us before, which was really encouraging for us to get that kind of feedback. So we'd like to build on that, really, and get on a few more and get the name out there, really, and just, you know, boost the profile a bit and get people coming to the smaller shows as well off the back of it.
And obviously have a good time.
And have a good time all of the time, yes.
Well, thank you so much for having a chat to us today. Really, have an absolutely cracking set later, so I will be freezing and watching you.
Right,
It'll be, got my hat and gloves at the ready, which I thought I'd never be saying for a gig, but, you know, what can you do? But have a fantastic one, and I hope that you get to actually see some more bands today at some point as well, and not spend all day doing interviews. So, good luck.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
So
Cheers.
Thanks.